I'm George Galloway. I heard on the street that somebody really important was in town. He's been at the top of his game for basically all of my life. He's a king. Larry, this is, I think, the 8th interview that you've done today, and it's not even dark yet. Are you ever going to retire? You're 83.
No, George, I don't think I could. I tried. When I left CNN, it was about 3 months, I thought I could retire. I was watching television, and they made the announcement that Osama bin Laden had been killed, and I literally was jumping out of my chair to run to a studio to do a show. And I had no show to do. And Carlos Slim had been talking to me about starting something, and I realized I had to go back. So we started Larry King Now, and then Politicking, and I went back, and now we're in our 6th season. I missed it. I loved interviewing people. I love the cameras. I love microphones. I love communicating. I think it keeps me young, that and having teenage boys.
I was going to ask you about that. I've got 5 children too. There's no doubt to me that children keep you young, but they also keep you having to work. And I must say, you're a role model for me in many ways. And one of them is I'm going to work until I can.
Oh, yeah, but I love work. I would work if there were no children, no dependents. No. I don't understand people who don't work.
Let's go back to the beginning. You're a legend. You're in the Hall of Fame for radio work and for television work. One of the few men who has made that switch so effortlessly and for such a long time. I myself also work in radio and TV. Which do you prefer, and what do you think are is the future for each of them?
Well, to predict the future in this business is impossible. Who would have told you about the iPhone 20 years? I mean, it's insane. So I don't know anyone could tell you about tomorrow. I love both. I love radio for its informality, for its closeness. There's something about radio. I love the physical. I don't text. I like the sound of voices. And radio is, you have to listen. Television, you don't have to listen. But television is kinetic. Television changed the world. You can't beat when you see something. So I realized the immediacy of television. But I like it too. I like everything about community. I like the whole ball of wax. I never wanted to be anything but a broadcaster. When I was 5 years old, George, I'd listen to the radio, 5. And I would go into the bathroom and imitate what the announcers had just said. A tale well calculated to keep you in suspense.
Radio days.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men, the shadow knows. And I would go, when I was a teenager, I'd go visit radio shows that had studio audiences. And I'd watch them stand by the microphone, and drop the paper so it doesn't make a noise as they would read their scripts. Watch the sound effects man creating the sound of fire. I was fascinated by the whole world of illusion. And radio was the theater of the mind. Because with radio, you could create everything. Now, radio's future is in trouble if the advance of driverless cars occurs. Because if we are in a world of driverless cars, that means you'll watch television in your car.
That is
what will happen to the radio?
That never occurred to me.
Most radio
Another
today
reason
is
to be
on
opposed to Uber and its driverless car. You just created there an atmosphere of radio from your New York background. I had the privilege, and everybody watching this needs to read your remarkable journey, my remarkable journey. I bought it getting on a plane on the east coast of the US and read it across country. And I was traveling alone. It was laugh out loud on every page.
Well, I would have been a comedian. If I didn't get into broadcasting, I think I'd have done stand-up comedy.
Well, you would have been brilliant.
I do a lot of speeches. I'm speaking here in London for a business group. I like making people laugh. I like walking onto a bare stage. So I love comedians. I've interviewed thousands of comedians. To walk onto a bare stage, nothing but a microphone and an audience, make them laugh. No script, make them laugh. Be funny. Think about that. Think about what the comic faces. He walks out or she walks out onto that stage. The light hits them. Be funny. Can't fake laughter. So you could be in a drama, you don't know how you're doing. You know, you do a Shakespeare, you don't know how you're doing. You assume they're attentive. But if it's a comedy, you know how you're doing.
Fantastic. You are, though, to me, quintessentially a New Yorker. In that book, My Remarkable Journey, you tell stories so funny that you cannot not laugh out loud of your background in Brooklyn and so on. You've come a very long way, but you must still remember that. Certainly you did.
I never forget. I'll tell you something, George. I left Brooklyn when I was 22 and a half years old to go to Miami, break into broadcasting. And I'm 83 now, so I've been away from Brooklyn 61 years. But I'm still from Brooklyn. I left Brooklyn, but Brooklyn never left me. So I've lived in Washington, Miami, Los Angeles. But I'm still from Brooklyn. You know, Brooklyn is a state of mind. It's a borough. It's one of 5 boroughs. But whenever I think of Brooklyn, I think of Brooklyn. When we were kids and we'd go into Manhattan, we would not say we're going to Manhattan, we would say we're going into the city. Manhattan was the city. We were Brooklyn. I wrote a book years ago called When You're From Brooklyn, Everything Else is Tokyo. And that was just about growing up. I was very poor. My father died when I was only 9 and a half. And my young brother and I were raised by a single parent, a mother who never remarried. They were Jewish immigrants. And I never had a father. We were very poor. We were on relief for 2 years. New York City bought my first pair of glasses. They paid our rent till my mother could go to work, till I was old enough to watch my brother. So I've always understood when they hear the term welfare, or we called it relief then. We were on relief. It was hard to take. Inspectors would come to the house to see what kind of meat my mother was buying. But some people grow up that way and get conservative because they know what not having something. And I grew up and got liberal. So the older I got, the more liberal.
Well, I wish you an even longer life in that case. Now, by the way, did your mother live to see you a success?
In Miami. She died at age 76 in 1976. I started my national radio show in 1978 and CNN in 1985. But she saw me a roaring success in Miami. Radio, television, newspaper, column at the Miami Herald. She never saw a book published. I've written 14, 15 books. She never saw that. But she saw me with Jackie Gleason, with Frank Sinatra. She went to see Don Rickles when he was beginning, and she knew actors and actresses that I met. And my daughter Kaya went to Jackie Gleason's house to spend a day, and my mother met him.
Jackie was a big mentor for you.
He was great to me. I met him when he moved the show down to Miami from New York in 1963, 64. I went down on the train with him. I hosted him on many shows. The night before he died, his publicist, Hank Meyer, called. He made a list of people to say goodbye to.
Now, one of the many anecdotes from your book, which has stayed with me, was how you literally bumped into Jack Kennedy. You literally were in a car that bumped into him. Tell us about that.
It was 1958. I had been on radio for a year, and we had it wasn't my car, but I was driving. It was a beat-up old convertible, and we wanted to drive to see what Palm Beach looked like. It was a Sunday morning. There were four of us. I was driving, two in front, two in back, an old car, and we're driving up US 1, right by the ocean. The ocean's on the right. In Palm Beach, they didn't build hotels on the ocean like they did in Miami Beach. So these houses are on our left, the ocean's on our right. I'm driving along, and it's a beautiful Sunday morning. Quiet, nobody on the road. And we're looking at the houses, and we're looking at the ocean, and I'm looking. And we're coming to Worth Avenue, which is the popular avenue. And there was a car stopped at a red light in a convertible. And I slowed down, but I was looking away, and I hit him. I must have been going at 10 miles an hour. I just bumped to us, his head bounced. And he got out of the car, and he came over to us, and he said, "How the hell did you hit me? It's a beautiful day. It's a Sunday morning. We're the only two cars on the road. You're not going fast. How the hell did you hit me?" I said, "Well, we've never been in Palm Beach." And I was looking around. "Do you want to exchange licenses?" He said, "No." I said, look, I'm Senator John Kennedy." "Oh, yeah. I'm going to run for president in 2 years. I tried to be vice president 2 years ago." "Yeah, I remember that." "Tell you what you do. Raise your right hand. Swear you'll vote for me." We all swore we'll vote for you. "Okay." And I bumped into John Kennedy's car. Now later, 2 weeks before he was killed, in 1963, maybe a week before, he spoke in Miami. And this was now 5 years later, from 1958. And I was in the third row, and he was speaking at a convention. And he was looking around, and he saw me, and he went like that. "You're the guy who hit me with the car." I never forgot that.
Larry, we've got to take a quick break. Be right back. Larry King.
The legend.
Before the break, we were talking about Jack Kennedy. I was brought up in a house where there was a picture of the Pope with preeminence, and under him, Jack Kennedy. It's why your anecdote has stayed with me. I loved the Kennedy family. What did you think of them?
They were extraordinary. They had everything. They were royalty without being royalty. They were immigrants, the American story. They were rich, but they understood the poor. The brothers had a father who was anti-Semitic, who didn't want to get into World War II. And they had one son who they wanted to be president, Joe Kennedy Jr., who died in a plane crash in World War II, which nearly destroyed the family. They had another daughter who was born with brain damage, and they had three other boys. And one of the boys became president. The other boy became a senator and attorney general. The other boy became...
And might well have become president.
Might well have become. And one of them became one of the great senators ever. I think Ted Kennedy would be one of the 5 great senators that ever served in the Senate. Ted was one of the most genuinely remarkable people I knew. I'll tell you a little story about him. There's a frame in my house of a letter. When they announced he had brain cancer, I wrote him a letter. And I said, "Dear Ted, best wishes. You know, I'll pray for you. I'm with you through this." And I get back a beautiful letter. "Dear Larry, thank you for thinking of me. I know that you had a heart attack and you went through heart surgery. So these things have befallen you, and that you would take time to write to me means so much to me. I'm so glad I'm in your prayers, and you are always in mine. All the best, Ted.
Did politicians get smaller, Larry, or am I just getting old? There are no politicians of that stature.
I don't know what that is. When I was in radio, I could tell you every member of the Senate. I could tell you every major foreign leader. I couldn't tell you every member of the Senate today, and I'm a political junkie. I don't know what it is, why a division has occurred, that those men years ago, and some women, that those men years ago could be angry all day and go out and have a beer. You know what changed it? Part of it that changed it was the jet age. They fly home on weekends. Well, it wasn't so easy to fly home then, so they'd spend the weekend in Washington. They were buddies. Barry Goldwater told me privately he voted for Hubert Humphrey. Wow. Because he was his friend. He was his friend. He didn't know Nixon. He knew Humphrey. They were buddies. You know, so they were friends. There's no friends in the Senate. These guys, there's like enemies. They don't just disagree. There's like a hatred. And I don't know where that came from.
And yet the parties are two cheeks of the same backside, really.
Yeah, they say that, but I don't believe that.
No?
The Democratic Party is much more a party of liberal bent, the Republican Party of the conservative bent. You have to be sort of moderate in America to succeed. You have to come to the middle. It's the art of compromise. It's not a democracy, it's a republic. America generally comes together. But I mean, like, there are stories like Tip O'Neill, the Speaker of the House, and he told me once, he attacked Reagan on the House floor that day, unmercifully. Just ripped him apart with this Social Security idea, and he goes back to his office, and the secretary comes in and says, the president's on the phone. And he said, I said to myself, oh my God. He picked up the phone and said, hello, and Reagan said, did you hear the one about the Irishman who went, that was different? Could you picture Trump calling?
Well, he tweets something semi-literate and extremely bellicose. You interviewed everybody. I mean, you have literally interviewed everybody who was anybody.
Except Fidel Castro, who you interviewed. Okay.
A very great man. I'm very sorry you didn't get to interview him. Who stands out for you on the political field?
Oh.
Bill Clinton seemed to me...
Well, he was my favorite because he was so glib and so smart.
He was a political machine, like a great white shark, perfect at what he did.
All presidents have some... You don't get to be president to have that kind of ego to say, I want to be president. And all presidents have something. George Bush, the first, George H.W. Bush, as nice a guy as you will ever meet, as courteous a guy, not a mean bone in his body. Gerald Ford...
Could he chew gum and walk in a straight line?
Best friend. He was a great football player. It was an unfair thing. Yeah. Good guy, great family. Jimmy Carter commanded a submarine, an atomic submarine, did more as an ex-president than any other ex-president ever. Great world citizen, beat cancer. Richard Nixon. Involved, brilliant, crazy. Everybody's against him, but a genius mind. I would hire him to analyze any situation, not solve it, but analyze it. He could work for my television station as a political analyst. Who, what, why, when, where? Nixon. Bill Clinton was a man well spent, just a guy's guy. Nobody could dislike Bill Clinton. You could be his fiercest political opponent. I'll put you 5 minutes in a room and you love him. He listens, he stares at you, and he's bright as a whip. He cares. George Bush, just a good guy. Not the best of presidents, not the brightest, but he has a good heart. Big baseball fan. which is, to me, I met for him 2 hours in the Oval Office just talking baseball. That was the rule, just talk baseball. And did more for AIDS internationally than all of our presidents. AIDS is being cured everywhere because of George Bush. People forget that. Barack Obama, a tremendous admiration for Barack Obama. As a human being, as a man well within himself, self-contained, bright. Donald Trump, as a friend, he was terrific. We know we were Fathers of the Year together. We went to the Super Bowl together. When Marla Maples was on the Broadway stage, we went to see her in theater. I had a medical procedure in New York. He took my wife to dinner. Now, this Donald Trump, I don't know, because I knew him, and politically he was very different. So this Donald Trump is not, he was in favor of a single-payer health system, favor of a right to abortion. So I don't know this Donald Trump. He always had an ego, but it was a fascinating ego. In other words, you never disliked him personally, because he was kind of fun. So this is a president that I would say I know, but I don't know. He's a president I know the best of all the presidents, and I don't know him.
People watching this are afraid of the world that Donald Trump is leading us into. Most people feel that the more Trump is attacked on the Russia front, the more he's headed into confrontation with Russia. Now,
that's a genuine fear of someone who is narcissistic and believes that everything revolves around him. What you have to hope for is good people around him, his Secretary of Defense, his Secretary of State, his daughter, and hopefully others like that, who can bring him to a sense of understanding that the world doesn't revolve around him. So the fear is genuine, but I think there are enough stopgaps just to prevent it happening. I don't think that would happen. Sending men to die, because he would be, the Donald Trump of 10 years ago would be saying, what are you bothering with Syria? I know that.
He was saying that when he was running.
No, Iraq? He was against Iraq.
Yeah.
This was crazy.
No, there's a queue at the door of people to interview you, to be interviewed by you. The last time we were together, the public were queuing up to get their picture with you. I say as a religious believer myself that God has been very good to you. And yet I read that you're an atheist.
Well, I say, and I'm every agnostic, every atheist says he's an agnostic because it's a safe thing to say, because no one really knows. No. So obviously it's easy to say, I don't know. But my logic, I grew up Jewish, I was bar mitzvahed, I read the Old Testament. I went to a bar mitzvah recently, I read the Old Testament. That God, I didn't like that God at all. Slay my enemies, destroy them, kill them. Didn't like him. I can't buy the thought that there's something after this. So one of the things about Judaism that I like is Judaism says, okay, you don't have to believe. Lead a good life. Lead a good life. If there's something else, fine. If there's nothing,
what do we lose?
You led a good life. So that's the way I look at it. My wife, she's a believer. People I know, there are believers, or they tell me they believe in a spirit or a force. I've never experienced the force. I've never seen the spirit. I've never had anyone from the dead talk to me. It's impossible for me to believe. What I do believe is that some geniuses years ago invented God as a brilliant way to keep the masses at bay. And the one way to keep them at bay was to promise them something tomorrow. So it had to be somebody rich. Someone who had the rubles and he had the temples, and he said, hey, you be good,
Pie in the sky when you die.
and God will take care of you. The meek shall inherit the earth.
Just not yet.
Well, no, as Woody Allen once said brilliantly, I don't fear death. I just don't want to be there when it happens.
Larry King, I often say this, but I don't always mean it. It's a real honor as well as a pleasure to have talked to you.
George, my pleasure to be with you.
Thank you very
I
much.
will now always refer to you as George the Hat. I love it.
Larry King, live and kicking.